Hi, everyone. My name is Haipei Xu. I'm president of the United Chinese American, or UCA. Today, we have a very rare opportunity to talk about the Chinese Lunar New Year. And for those who don't know about much about the UCA, we have at UCA, we are focused on three things. Number one, training our next generations. And number two, encouraging more civic engagement and political participation of our community in American life. And the last one is our culture, heritage, identity, or in general, Chinese American way of life. It is a vitally important subject. And I would even say that in this very pretty bad time for our community, when our community is more or less under attack, to foster a strong Chinese American identity is even more important, especially for your next generations. And today we also have a great honor to start this joint program together with the Chinese School Association in America, a wonderful national association for all the Chinese students in the Chinese Sunday schools, representing a very large community. But most important for today, we have Mr. David Lei or Li Xianxen, who is really one of a kind. I couldn't find a second David Lei in the whole United States. We are going to record this so that we will be able to share with you if you missed it, or if you have kids, you couldn't bring them over today, you can definitely share this recording with them. And I absolutely believe that your kids will benefit from that. Xiaming, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Xiaming. I'm from the Chinese School Association in the United States. And since 1994, Chinese School Association has been promoting Chinese language and cultural learning in the United States. Now, the association has over 460 member schools from coast to coast. Now, when I first heard Haipei told me the topic, the Chinese New Year, I was silent for 3 seconds, and then I say, that's a great topic. Because from the first grade in our Chinese school, we have been telling our students, what is Chinese New Year, right? It seems like everyone knows that. The cultural significance, the zodiac connections, the traditional costume, and also the length of the celebration. But I always ask myself, like, since the topic is so hot and everyone knows it, what have I missed? Is there anything I don't know about it? So in my earlier years, I think I know everything, but now I think I don't know anything. I want to learn. So I think this is a great topic. It will change your mind. So we have a stereotype like we know the Chinese New Year. This is one of the major Chinese culture. No one will not know it, but actually we may not know something. All right, so now I would like to introduce the David Lei and let him to tell you another side of the Chinese New Year. As a parent, I also a little bit nervous about like the parents didn't tell anyone, so I didn't hide anything on behalf of the parents, but I let David Lei to tell us what's happening over there. David, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
I hope you can. No? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the presentations, what your mother or what your parents never told you about the Chinese New Year. I hope you do learn something. The problem with our Chinese culture and history is we're so diverse. We were just talking before this event that the Cantonese celebrated differently from Northerners. And if someone says, in my village, we celebrate it differently, I can't argue against that. but I'm just going to go right into it, and you can have questions at the end. And it's not advancing, so I'm going to try to advance this way. Okay, there's really only two people writing about Chinese American festivals, which is very different from the festivals done in China. One is Dr. William Hu here, Chinese New Year's Fact and Folklore. The other is Carol Stepanchuk in Michigan. Both of them actually live in Michigan. But let's go back to the very beginning. Why is Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year the time it is? We can go back to, on the far left is Yu the Great Da Yu. Because he controlled the flood, people made him the emperor, and he started the Xia dynasty. Right now in the West, this dynasty is not recognized as there's no writing that we can find to prove that is real. But we start here. And during the Xia dynasty, the New Year started the time we celebrate it now on the lunar calendar, on the Yin month, which is January, February. Then when the Shang dynasty took over the Yin, they want to one-up the Xia dynasty, and they moved it 1 month ahead, December, January. So it moves around, and then later on, when the Zhou dynasty conquered the Shang, they moved it to November, December, another month earlier. Then the Qin Shi Huang, when he took over, he moved it yet another month earlier. Then the Han Dynasty, it went back to the Xia Dynasty calendar. So calendar is really political, up to what the emperor wants to do or the Congress to determine the date. That's why it moves around. Now, when is Lunar New Year? Well, it's really the second new moon after the winter solstice. So we can go to our Western calendar to look for the winter solstice. Then you can Google the moon phases and you look for the second new moon after the winter solstice. And that is Lunar New Year. The Chinese calendar is really complicated. It's the only one that merged the lunar and the solar calendar. That's why it's so hard to calculate. No other culture really mix it like this to do the lunar and the solar. Lunar, most ancient culture used a lunar because you can see the moon and the phases. So you tell someone, let's meet in San Francisco at the next full moon. And they will meet you there because you can see it. On the sun, based on the sun, it's very hard to tell them the angle, at least in ancient days. The problem of mixing the two calendar is that the moon phases is about 29.5 days per month, the lunar month. And on the solar, it's a little more than 30 days. So it's hard to combine the two. But we know in 19 years, it'll match. 235 lunar calendar will match almost exactly 19 years, the solar years. So that's the way we can merge it finally. But in order to do this, for our lunar calendar, 7 years out of 19 years, we have to add an extra month, a leap month instead of a leap day. So that's why the math is so complicated. Now, to even make it more difficult, earlier this year, when we celebrated the Year of the Dragon, in Beijing, The new moon started on January 25th at 5:43 in the morning. But for me in San Francisco, I need to celebrate the Lunar New Year on January 24th at 1:44 p.m. So because of the time difference, we can have the Lunar New Year at a different day, one day apart. So this also confused things quite a bit. Now I go to the solar portion of the Chinese lunar solar calendar. And for New Year, based on the solar portion of the Chinese calendar, which has actually 24 solar terms. So the Earth moves around the sun, so that's 360 degrees. And the Chinese divide every 15 degrees to be a certain important date. And when the Earth is at 315 degrees around the sun, we call it Li Cun or Lap Chun in Cantonese, or spring commences or the beginning of spring. This is really the real New Year for the Chinese. Today is on the lunar calendar is the 23rd of the 12th month, and this is the minor Lunar New Year. And today is the day we sent the kitchen god up to heaven to report. So as of tonight, we can party because there's no spy watching over us. So until the kitchen god comes back on Lunar New Year Day, we can do whatever because there's no longer a spy at home to watch what we do. So this is the confusing part. And you have to remember this spring commences, Li Cun, is normally on February 4th every year because this is solar. But this year it will be on February 3rd. And for us in San Francisco, is at 6:10 a.m. You have to remember this, and I'll explain it later why you have to remember this. So a lot of people get excited when their year comes around, especially Westerners. This is the year of the wood snake, serpent, and people born year of the snake, especially Westerners, they say, oh boy, this is my year. But for the Chinese, this is a year that's difficult to pass. And the concept is you are at a point where you're facing the Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, Tai Shui. And this is not good because you can offend him. So you have to do certain things to pass the year. And one thing is to wear something red. You can go to Chinatown and buy your red underwear, but I like to wear red socks. This is $10 for 3 in San Francisco's Chinatown. And this one, every time you take a step, this is 小人. So it's 踩小人. You step on a petty person. Get rid of all the petty people in your life by every step you take. So this will help protect you. You can also get charms. These are 培腰 in Cantonese, 貔貅 in Mandarin. So you can get all these charms and you can go online to do all these things to protect you. One thing good about Chinese astrology, feng shui, and all this, there's always a way to counter anything that's bad. You just have to know what to do. And you can believe them or not, but these are fun to do regardless. Now, there are actually many Chinese New Years. So we have La Ba, the 8th day of the 12th month. Nowadays, is more of a Buddhist holiday where you feed the poor. You think about the poor people And in the old day, they would make a porridge in temple to nourish everybody to get ready for the cold months ahead. So it's feeding everybody. And then we have the winter solstice, which is December 20th, 21st. And for the Chinese, this is a reunion day. You have a family reunion, and we eat tangyuan. So the Northerners normally sweet, the Cantonese normally a salty tangyuan. And then we go to here, the 23rd day is the minor or the lesser New Year. And this is the day the kitchen god goes to heaven to report. And so we're released and it's time to party. And then we have Li Cun, which is normally February 4th. This year is February 3rd. And this is really the new year. And this is the day that the zodiac animal changes. So you're a dragon until February 3rd, 6:10 a.m. in San Francisco. You don't change animal on Lunar New Year Day because that swings too much. And it's based on the movement of the sun and the planet and the stars. So it's based on the solar calendar and not the lunar. When I was young, I always wonder about this because in the lunar calendar, some months we add an extra month. So those years where we have 13 months, we have a lot of those animals, and other months only have 12. And sometimes in astrology, we want to match the different animals for marriage. So I said, well, some years you have too many people of that animal, and other years you have less, so you can never match. But since astrology is based on solar, when the Earth is at 315 degrees on the elliptical, and if we change it on that day, the number of animals every year stays steady. So for those of you who believe your animal change on Lunar New Year Day, you have to go back and check if you're born near February 4th, find out when it really should be, because you might be another animal different than what you think you are. And of course, in China is family reunion. So more people are in the moving, traveling the week before Lunar New Year. And it's a great thing to do to see your family every year. There's things to do, not to do. You can go online. I don't really have to talk about this much because you can go online to do this. Then I want to talk about the difference between China and America. On the left is the flower fair in China, normally in the south, because the flower, they wouldn't be growing in the north during the lunar month, the 12th lunar month and the first lunar month. But we also have a flower fair in San Francisco that we started in the late 1980s. And it's probably now bigger than what they have in China. Huge flower fair we have. It attracts many people. And then, of course, in China, for Lunar New Year's Eve, you have a lot of eating. On the left, you have ganbei. And I want to let people know, especially young people, when you toast someone and you're the junior, your cup or your glass should be lower. And if you're the superior, you can put it up. But with Chinese, two people on the same level, each one always try to be lower than the other. And today on the right, CCTV always has a Lunar New Year gala. And most families in China now spent Lunar New Year's Eve watching the gala on TV. Then we have Tuan Nian. family dinner for New Year, and there's a lot of customs, what food you eat, and you should always have fish, but you never finish it to show that the surplus, that's a homonym, play on the word fish. You can mean fish or surplus. And the one on the left, don't sleep at night, Lunar New Year's Eve. As a kid, I never understood this. I was told that the longer I can stay awake, the longer my parents will live. And this is so much pressure on a young child. I try to stay awake because I want my parents to live a long life. Maybe we should change that. But that's one thing. The adults always gamble and do things, so they have things to do. The kids less so. Of course, you never do any swearing. You behave very well throughout the Lunar New Year period. We always light firecrackers that evening. And in America, most people say, oh, that's to ward off evil spirits, but it's really not. For the Chinese, we always would use the ones with the red paper. So we have 满地红. So it's not like only a red carpet to welcome people, but in traditional China, whenever you have gatherings, you always do sacrifices to ancestors, to the deities. So is the bloodletting to represent the blood. And today, and for Chinese traditionally, the firecrackers is to let the ancestor and the deities know we're having a ceremony, we're having food here, we're having a party here. Please come down and join us. So that's a big part of it. The firecracker is really announcing to ancestor and deities, as well as playing music. The drumming for line dancing is to let the ancestors and the deities know to join us. And then on the right is, in many homes, they have home shrines, and it's to make reports to the ancestors. In the South, in Guangdong, we normally have 5 generations of ancestors in our shrine. This is equivalent to about 150 years. And we Chinese believe our ancestors are always around us. We're allowed to talk to them. In the West, no, someone died, we're cut off. But for the Chinese, we believe we still have interaction with our ancestors. We don't worship our ancestors. We make sacrifices to them. Some people say we 拜祖先, bye, but the word bye, we also 拜年. We go and spend time and visit friends and relatives. And this is the way it really is. The concept of the Chinese worshiping ancestor came from the Catholic Church. During the late Ming, the Jesuits were already in China, and they were very educated, and they studied the Chinese, and they came to the conclusion the Chinese, we venerate our ancestors by doing a lot of rituals. Because these ancestors, they're not all-knowing, all-powerful, how can they be if they need us to present them with food, burn paper money to them, and burn clothing for them, symbolically give it to them? So they're not all-knowing, all-powerful, not like in the West we consider a deity or God. But we venerate them and we make sacrifices to them. So later on, the Franciscans and the Dominicans came to China, and they were less educated, and they said, oh no, the Chinese, they're worshiping their ancestors, and we have to stop this. And they went to the Pope, and the Pope says, oh yeah, and the Pope then banned Catholics prophesizing the Chinese unless they will stop these rituals. So this went back and forth. So you can Google rights controversy, and it'll tell you why we come to this, where people would say the Chinese worship their ancestor. I still do a lot of these ceremonies, and I'm 3rd generation Christian. These are really rituals. And for me, these are important. to remember the ancestor and to think they're around and we can talk to them, report to them, because this is my immortality as well. We know we're all going to die, but I kind of want my descendants to know something about me, to remember me. This is a human need, and we Chinese are lucky. We institutionalize this with these kinds of rituals, with our zupu and our genealogy books. I can trace my ancestry 146 generation, 146 generation, 4,722 years. And many Chinese can do this. So we're going to be remembered. This is a great feeling. And so we Chinese are lucky, and I would like to keep these traditions because this is a human need. And more than that now, this Professor George Bonanno in Colombia, he studies grieving, how people grieve when a relative die. And he studies this throughout the world. And he came to this conclusion in his book, The Other Side of Sadness. He said the Chinese, we grieve the least. We don't grieve so deeply, and we bounce back the quickest because of our traditions and our rituals and our beliefs. We believe our ancestors are around. We can still talk to them. We have obligations to them as we have obligations to them in life. We have Qingming, we sweep the graves. We have to burn paper money, light incense, make these sacrifices, burn paper clothing. These are all symbolic, but we think about them. But because of these things that we do, they're not totally gone. So we bounce back the quickest when we are separated from them. But whereas in the West, they're totally cut off. So they can't get over the grieving as quickly as the Chinese. So we have to rethink some of these. So this is on the first day of Lunar New Year, you go to the temple and get your predictions for the coming year. And you burn different paper money. For the gods, you burn gold, but for ancestor, because in traditional China, normal people cannot own gold. So it has to be silver. So the kind of paper you burn and the kind of incense and the candle you use, there's a whole discussion on that we can do. But going to the temple, these deities also, what kind of deities need us to burn paper money to them and to offer food to them? But for the Chinese, we're born into these rituals for different deities. Many of them are real people, historic people, and we want to remember the good things they did and teach the next generation of why we should venerate some of these people. But I think what we really do for them are rituals, and we're born into them. Different clans have different deities they pray to. The earlier Chinese American that came from Guangdong to the US, they were all Taoists, except for the Wang family. If you were the Wang clan, Guanyin was your patron deity and she's Buddhist. So only the Wang family had Buddhism. Buddhism didn't come to America really as an organized religion until the 1950s and 60s. Prior to that, all the temples we have that are Chinese before that were Taoists. So of course you go Bainan, this respect for parents, and today we can do it by phone or FaceTime. Then we have the Bainan and Yangge. These are performances that's still done. In China, they would do the Yangge from one village to the next village to Bainan, to visit the next village. And many of these traditions, I can talk for hours about it. I'll touch upon line dancing later on. And then every day after the new year, you're supposed to do something different. Like the third day, you go to sleep earlier because you don't want to disturb the mice because that's their wedding night. The mice wedding is on the third day. And by the third day, you're pretty tired from partying. So it's a good way to just rest. On the seventh day is everybody's birthday. And this is important more in Southeast Asia, where we say lo sai gai, to mix, to gather together, to make money together off of everybody else. So you gather your family and friends together and mix a sashimi, a raw fish salad. And this is very important in Southeast Asia, people from southern China. So, but on the seventh day is everybody's birthday. So you don't turn a year older until the seventh day, not on Lunar New Year's Day, but on the seventh day. The Chinese have this birthday for everybody because you don't want to give away your birthday, especially your birth time. Because the Chinese believe if you know this and you give to an astrologer, a good astrologer, they can read your whole life. You don't want to give away all your secrets, your whole life. So it's just as important to keep this as a secret, your birth date and your birth time, as your social security number or your password. The only time you give it out is right before you're married. You will give it to your bride or your groom side of the family, the other side, so they can see if you are a match or not. I don't think they really use it for that. It's usually used as a good excuse if they want to call off the wedding. If they want to let the wedding go, they would say, oh, everything's fine, because there's way to get around anything that doesn't match. But if you really don't want to marry that other person or have the two family get together, it's just a nice way to say, oh, their 八字 or their birth date and time don't match. So I think it's used mainly for that as an excuse to get out of a wedding. And then today in America, we have a beauty pageant. In China, you never have a beauty pageant for Lunar New Year, but in San Francisco, we do. And we have but in China, the only time we have kind of a procession, a New Year parade, is on the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, Yuan Xiaojie, or the Lantern Festival, where all the kids in the community will bring out their homemade lantern at night and form a procession and walk through the community. And so it's like a parade that's closest to any kind of Lunar New Year parade. And so the Chinese New Year parade in San Francisco is really the lantern parade. You look at this dragon, it's all lit up like a lantern. It's tied to a generator with a lot of cables, so you really can't perform it. So it's really a lantern parade. Now, the first time in America that I could find where the Chinese celebrated Lunar New Year was February 3rd, 1851. A guy named Norman Singh, he had owned a restaurant, one of the first restaurants in America, Chinese restaurant. He invited friends to his house, and he invited some policemen to his house to celebrate the Chinese New Year. But this was private. The first time it was done publicly was February 1853, when they got together on Grant Avenue and lit firecrackers. So this is the earliest I found where Lunar New Year was celebrated. And in the East Coast was in Lunar New Year 1871 in Bellevue, New Jersey. About 100 Chinese were hired there to work at a steam laundry. They were brought out there right after the Transcontinental Railroad was built. So they were there to do laundry, and they celebrated the Lunar New Year, first time there. Now, we don't have Lunar New Year parades. We have marriage processions. We have imperial processions. We have temple procession. And recently we have political procession, but no Chinese New Year's parade until 1953. San Francisco Chinese Chamber of Commerce decided to do a parade to feature Chinatown and bring in the tourists. So it became public celebration for all of San Francisco to invite San Franciscans. And it was a big success. These were the founder, H.K. Wong on the far left corner, Charles Leon, Colonel John Young. They were very much part of the Chinese Historical Society of America on the right. And on the bottom left, we have Jackson Hu, who took over the parade by the early 60s. And the far left, bottom far left is Wayne Hu, who took over the parade by the late 1980s. And in between, I did the parade for, many, many years. Now, why do we celebrate the Lunar New Year? Now, on the right-hand side here, we see the word for cow or an ox. And it's very easy. You see the horn here, this one stroke. It has two pairs of legs, a body, and a tail, right? So this is a cow or an ox. But here we have Nian, but it looks like the cow, right? It has a horn, 6 legs, this dot, an extra eye, a body, and a tail. So when I was in high school, I was told this was a monster. It has horns, 6 legs, 3 eyes. It's something to be feared because this was the Chinese philosophy for the coming of a year about 100 years ago. It was so difficult to survive a year in China that you will have 团年. You gather your family together and count heads, see who survived. The next few days you visit friends, congratulate them on surviving a whole year and wish them good luck on a year, because a year was something to be feared, and you need to do something extra to survive it. And that was the philosophy. Just 100 years ago, if my great-grandfather read that there was a flu going on, his reaction would be, oh my gosh, I will lose half my family this year. Whereas today we will say, well, I might be in bed for a week or two. So it's totally different. So if we look at the traditions that we have, the concept of a year was very different. So we have other words we associate with the Lunar New Year. We see people put up this word for fu, but it's really a roof over your head. That's that one line. A mouth for food to eat, and tian, to have land. And on the left side, some people say that represent clothing, but it really represent progeny, to have the next generation. So if you have shelter, you have food to eat, you have land, and you have the next generation, you're blessed. So this is to be blessed. That's why the Chinese have this, to be blessed with all these things, and they'll hang it upside down because it means to have arrived, Dao, to turn it upside down. And of course, we put up calligraphy. These are couplets, very meaningful, very difficult to think up. I can talk an hour on this, so we'll talk about this another time. Now I want to talk about rebuses, why Chinese have so many symbolism. Most decorative art the Chinese have, you have to read them. And this is a example. My daughter drew this for me in the 4th grade. Anyone know what this means? We see 4 bees here, or, and this string tie into a knot. So this is to be, so it's to be or not to be, right? So if you were to read this, and Chinese is this way. Many of the decorative art, you can read it because Chinese, we can only make about 300 sounds times 4 tones, 1,200 sounds we can make. But we have a high school, Chinese high schooler will know 4,000 or 5,000 words. And if you're educated in college, you have 8,000 words you would know. But divided by 1,200 sounds, you will have a lot of homonyms, puns, words that sound the same but have different meanings. So during Lunar New Year, I decorate my house. This was my house from the year of the horse. So this, we have 柿子, 柿柿. So 2 of them is 柿柿. These are apple, 平安. This is on a stand, so 平安. And this represent 如意. So this is telling my guests, wishing them 事事平安如意. So a lot of people do this to wish their guests special good luck for the coming year. And they will take out their decoration. This is 福禄寿, wishing them blessing, position in life, status in life and wealth, and longevity. But this is really, most Chinese, this is really folk art. And for the Chinese, they say it's not only important to be old, but you should be vigorous in your old age. And that's what this actually means, because this is the male sex organ, and this is the female sex organ, meaning you must be sexually vigorous as well. So you have all these things that I can read, because this is 大吉, but is used as 大吉, 吉祥. And this is, this would be to have surplus, 余. So this would be 大吉 or 大吉. And this is 年余, 年年大吉. And this is the same thing, 年年大吉, because it sounds like 吉祥. But 橘子 actually is 橘, but it's close enough where we use it that way. And for the Cantonese, we have different sounds. For the Cantonese, we must see the tongue. In Mandarin, 舌头, it means nothing. But in Cantonese, this is lei. The same sounds as prophet, li. So 大吉, 大利, or 大鸡, and then 大利. Because in a real chicken, you never see the tongue. But the Cantonese in his art, his ceramics, and everything, they would want to see the tongue for profit. 关上关, 3 friends of winter. So all the decorative art have special meaning. These are very close special friends, because these are friends in harsh climate. So this is the pine, the plum blossom, and the bamboo. So I sent this to close friends to tell them secretly, I really count on you to be my friends when the going gets rough. So these are more. I'm running low on time, so I'll skip them. These are all we can talk about. In the old days, these were all woodblock prints, very pretty. But today we go to the printed one, litho. They're still kind of pretty, but almost not worthy of collecting. But all of these have different meanings that you can read into them. Now I get to the bad things that you never do. Like we know you never give a clock, 送钟, and a wreath, and open an umbrella in the house. That's very bad luck in the house or not. And you don't give pears, or you don't share a pear with someone because it means to separate. Li and Li Kai, that Li. And books, you never give a book to someone that gamble because of su. But you can counter this by giving them a brush, a pen. In Cantonese, is batsu, negative, not to lose. And then if you have a painting of someone you don't like, you give them a painting of 2 horses and 2 tigers because this is mama hoo. You're telling them they're mama hoo. And then I have ones that I make up. So this is, I found this in Guizhou, is a ox and it's a whistle. And this is a ox being blown on by the wind. So I give this to friends, not friends, people I don't like. I sent them one. I said, I'm thinking about you, but this is really 吹牛, right? You give someone this, you're telling them they're braggers, 吹牛, that they brag a lot. So this is a lot of 柿子. So this is 多事. So you give this to someone, you're saying 多事. Especially a picture like this is 多是非. Now this is peach blossom and 2 swallows. And I have a painting like this, and I hang it when I have someone I don't like come and visit me, because I will tell them, because I know you were coming, I put up this special painting just for you. It's a spring painting with swallows and peach blossom, and they'll thank me. But what does this mean? What is peach in Chinese? Tao. And then these are yan, tao yan. So I'm telling them, I'm thinking about you because you're very 讨厌. You're pesky. So the Chinese love these play on words, and we can do this. So we can make up a lot of these, and you should within your family. So I go to lion dancing. When you ask Chinese, why do the Chinese lion dance for these special occasions? And they normally say 90% will say to ward off evil spirits. But when I ask the lion dancers, can you describe to me what are these evil spirits? What are they like? Can you describe them to me? What do they do? They can't tell me. And I ask them, do you believe in evil spirits? 90% will say no. And I said, how does this lion dance? How does your dance scare them away? They can't tell me. But the next time they go to a school, they're going to perform, but before they go tell the audience, we Chinese lion dance to ward off evil spirits. Then they leave. Well, this is, you think is harmless, but if, you know, when I was young, 7, 8, 9, and adults are saying this, and my friends, non-Chinese friends, come and ask me, you Chinese believe in this? That this lion dance can ward off evil spirits? How does it do that? In the American context, I can't explain it. So I'm stuck, and I'm a bit embarrassed about it, that adults would say lion dancing is done to ward off evil spirits without really explaining it. So this is what we call microaggression. Things people say about others, about ourselves, that we think are harmless, but in the longer term can cause a lot of psychological damage. So we have to really rethink some of our culture and what we say, how we explain it. Lion, these Southern lion dance only started in about 1850 from the Cantonese opera. And by 1850, we had real lions in our zoo in China. So why did the Cantonese design a lion that looks so odd, has a horn, has these big eyes, have these pom-poms, these two big pom-poms, have all these teeth and fangs on the side, wide open mouth, and a tongue that's very prominent. Well, we have to go back to history to look at Fang Shangsi. These are the shamans. They ward off evil spirits. And if you look at these, the Fang Shangsi, they have a horn. That's why the lion has a horn, has 4 eyes. These pom-pom acts as the other 2 eyes. So you can see the 4 eyes have these fangs and teeth, which is why they have. And for the Cantonese, this is to have profit. 有利. The Cantonese would say 有利. And then we know from Neolithic time and as late as the Shang Dynasty, as this bronze Yo shows, the Chinese believe the shamans can talk to the next dimension, to heaven, through animals, through the mouth of animals. So this is what is representing. So that's why it's a wide open mouth. So line dancing is a shaman trying to ward off evil spirits from this tradition. And so we have line dancing, and they go after the green. They go after the hongbao, and we call this in Cantonese 垂签. So in Mandarin, it's 彩青. Remember that for a while, because I'll come back to this. So we see this all the time, 垂签, lines going after the greens. Then you oftentimes see a boy and a girl, and it would be called 金童玉女. And they're always placed, we say 男左女右, from the stage, male stage left, female stage right, like this. The reason we have male stage left, female stage right, is because the word 好. Because you see the boy and the girl. If you place things like this way, as the boy and girl placed during the parade, you have goodness. If you place it wrong, the 好 is missing. You don't form this word. So placement is very important. So the stage left should be yang, stage right should be yin. So along with the dragon, which you will see for Lunar New Year's parade, besides the flaming pearl, we also have a rooster, a lantern of a rooster, because that's a yang element. We also have a flower basket, because you need to have flower to have fruit, to have seeds, to have the whole cycle. The reason for the flowers for Lunar New Year is to have fruit, to have seeds, to have progenies. That's why. That's just the beginning. And then we also have the sun and moon lantern. So if it's male this side, female this side, these lanterns are placed right. By the way, these lanterns on the left are lanterns from 1890 that went along with the oldest surviving Chinese dragon in the world, performance dragon we have in Marysville. So you see in our parade on the right, they're placed right until you look at the girls carrying these 2 lanterns. They're facing forward. So they're switched around. And why are they switched around? Because if you have 垂签, 彩青, this becomes the word 名. So you have 彩青复名. The Chinese in San Francisco did this in the early 20th century to overthrow the Qing dynasty, to restore the Ming, to let the Han people come back. So supported Sun Yat-sen. So this was done for political reasons. So there's a lot of in-depth information that if we study deeper, That's the true meaning. And for dragon dancing, it really should be the symbol for all of America, because we know the dragon is the most powerful Chinese zodiac animal. It's mythological. It's made up of the best of all the animals. It has the eyes of a rabbit, antlers of a deer, mouth of a camel, talons of an eagle, legs of the tiger, body of a serpent, whisker of a catfish, scales of a carp. So the best of all the animals, making it the most powerful. So if we have diversity, we're accepting of the best of other cultures, we become the strongest. And this is what America should adopt. The Chinese knew this from ancient times, that if you adopt the best from all the different culture, you become the strongest. So I'll end it here and take questions. So this is also a pun because it's 谢谢, two 螃蟹. So I'll stop sharing. And questions.
This is Jack Ding. I have a question.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah, hi,
Mayor Ding from Sonoma.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Lei. Yeah, we fortunately we got a chance to hear a lot of the stories from you. I know Haipei did a lot of the work. 我们可以说是三顾茅庐。终于把你请出来了，是我们的那个荣幸。我呢是那个 UCA 的board member， 也是那个Sonoma City 的 City Council 和第一位中国的市长。一直我和海培也建议过，能够让Mr. Lei 给我们一个很全面的一个讲座。那今天呢，终于实现了。首先要感谢海培和UCA 的执行部门，太感谢了。我呢有一个问题，就是说，像你现在讲的这些内容，是那么的有趣，是那么的罕见，能不能够像我们能够怎么样传播，让更多的人知道？那这里面呢，我想可能涉及到一个版权问题，这个呢，我希望您和海培，还有和我们梁教授大概能够商量一下，怎么样能够让更多的人来享用这些非常珍贵的知识和文化的传承。我就讲这里，谢谢。
My first reaction is our culture, the Chinese culture, is so deep. We probably have an answer for most problems, because we have such a long history. We've confronted many of these before, and these are the wisdom of our ancestors. We just have to study, research, and interpret it for the American context. Today in America, people are much more educated. Our children are going to be much more educated, and it'll be driven more with science. We have to relook at our culture and interpret it for them in the American context, not only for them, but for all Americans, because we have a 40% interracial marriage amongst Asian Americans. So after 3 generations, our descendants won't look like us. Like it or not, that is what America is about. After 3 generations, very little hope that our descendants will look like us. So this culture that has helped us, the values we have that have helped us to achieve, to survive, because I think the culture, the Chinese culture, is very good for survival, because China was so difficult to survive a whole year. and helped me personally to achieve. And I want to pass this to my descendants to help them survive and to achieve. It has to be done this new way in the American context for all of America, not just for Chinese speaking people, but it has to be something that regular Americans will adopt, or it won't survive in this country and our descendants won't benefit from these values, these wisdom.
Yep.
So for me, this is very important, is to figure out how to let all Americans know that these are very valuable things, rituals that we do, concept that we have, that they also can benefit from, not only Chinese Americans.
Thank you.
Okay. There are many questions from in the chat box. One audience said, "How about 除夕寿岁? New Year Eve, what kind of elements are involved inside the 除夕寿岁?"
This one, my Chinese is not as good on this, but there are so many rituals, so many things. There would be thousands. And it really is by families, by clans, by districts. I found almost every family, every village would have different rituals, but mainly the concepts are similar. So this one, I need to pass and answer it another time.
Okay, sure. Yeah, there's so many positive, welcoming comments in the chat box, especially the kids, younger generations, they really enjoy your lecture. Yeah. Okay, any question? Let me go through. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay, one in a very earlier slide, there is a Mormon temple. What does that mean?
Oh, Mormon temple. That slide I used for a talk I gave to a Chinese genealogy group earlier 2024, where I gave the talk at the Mormon temple. It should have been San Francisco. It just showed that Lunar New Year can be different days in different part of the world. Because China is 16 hours ahead, they can have their New Year a day ahead of us. I mean, they will have it a day behind us because we're 16 hours behind. So, but if you want to really be very accurate about your zodiac animal and all this, you have to look at the exact hours. Because if you go to an astrologer, a Chinese astrologer, and want to get your fortune told, you have to be very accurate. And after I told you, it should be really February 4th. Some of you might have to go back and you've been living thinking you're a different animal than what you really are.
There is a person raised their hands to ask questions.
I have a question.
Lu Yan Gu, please. Oh. You can mute yourself.
Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. Chinese Lunar New Year can be last from like 7 days earlier until the Spring Festival.
Until normally Lantern Festival, 元宵, on the 15号.
Yeah,
1月
yeah.
15号。
Yeah, until before that, like 腊月23, I know 腊月23 is celebrating all over China, even southern northern parts.
Yes. Actually, it goes longer. 在旧金山 in the Lee Family Association, 李氏公所, we will have our spring banquet on March the 28th. So we celebrated all the way to the end of March. So it depends on where you're from, is celebrated many different ways.
Okay.
I have a question.
Please raise your hands. Now,
Yes.
Arnie, please.
So my question is, are there any differences between good or advanced festivals and bad or backward festivals? Are there any difference between the good festivals, good fair tales, and the bad fair tales? How can you tell the difference?
Well, the Chinese, we're very flexible. We can turn good to bad and bad to good. I do a ritual, 打小人, on second day of the second month. So you can say 打小人, or you can say to make these 小人 to be 贵人, to convert them. So Chinese are very flexible. There's almost a counter to everything. Feng shui. If it's bad feng shui, you can always do something to make it good feng shui. So the Chinese are very flexible depending on the messaging you want to message. And all these are rituals. They can be changed. Traditions are different for different families. Different families have different food for Lunar New Year and can have different meaning. So you just make your own traditions, your own customs for your family and your own group of people, your own clan, the people from your village. This is very doable.
Yuan, please.
Did you say Rich and Arnie?
Yes. Yeah, please.
All right, so my question has kind of already been answered in the chat, but I wanted to ask the expert himself. Is there anything special that happens in the Sichuan province of China?
There are more dragon dancing in Sichuan than anywhere else in China. They have the most kinds of dragon dancing. So I would look for those. And the Kejia especially have the most kind of animal dances. But I'm not an expert on Sichuan. My expertise is more on Chinese American. How is celebrated here, how they're interpreted. So it's mainly Cantonese. But Sichuan, I would say definitely the dragon dancing. I always look to Sichuan for the different kinds of dragons that they have.
Well, thanks for answering my question. Now I got to go tell my mom.
Can I have a question?
Please.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Haipei.
Okay, so David, one thing in particular, I saw the pictures, and especially about the end of the Lunar New Year season, which is what is the last?
元宵.
Right. So
yes.
You did say that, and in Chinatown, San Francisco, people have almost like an evening party.
We have a parade around that time.
Okay.
The Lunar New Year parade.
So do you have two parades or just one parade?
We have many, many parades during Lunar New Year. The official one is managed by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. We get up to 1 million people watch it live on the streets. Normally, I would say 500,000 up to 1 million, depending on the weather. We get about 8 million people watch it on TV. People buy the broadcast from our local channel. And so it's a big thing. And I did it for a long time because this was our platform. Normally, people hear about the Chinese in Chinatown when it came to gang wars, illegal political contribution. This is the only time in the year where we control the media. They come down and ask, what is this about? Why the celebration? So for about 2 weeks, San Francisco, Chinatown, we tell the media why we're doing this.
Right.
And some of the positive things. And this was our soapbox. So that parade is very important. When teachers see the parade, they say, oh, it's that time of the year to bring out our curriculum about the Chinese contribution building the railroad, things like that. So, but today, for me, and I've talked to you about this, is really our contribution to civil rights and immigrant rights. In just the first day, Trump's first day, he signed the executive order banning birthright citizenship unless you have at least one parent that's an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the Chinese fought for this in the 1800s, and we won. Birthright citizenship is a Chinese effort, Chinese American effort. Right to a public education, Tate versus Hurley, California Supreme Court, Chinese effort. The reason immigrants can go to school is this lawsuit. We have equal protection under the law. Yick-Wall versus Hopkins.
Right.
The administration of the law and the execution of the law has to be equal. And this is won by the Chinese. And then we have political asylum. The first time this country ever thought about political asylum was the Chinese that helped General John Pershing in Mexico to try to capture Pancho Villa. And these Chinese that helped General Pershing, when he was recalled to the US to go to Europe to fight World War I, he brought the Chinese with him, but the Chinese that helped the US military could not come across the border because of the Exclusion Act of 1882 that disallowed Chinese from coming in. So Pershing went to Congress, passed Public Law 29 to allow these Chinese to come in. First time this country considered political asylum was because of the Chinese. Miranda Act, when you arrest someone, you have to read them their rights. This is actually based on a Chinese case, Jiang Songwan in 1924. The Supreme Court, when Miranda came up, just used the Jiang Songwan Supreme Court case in 1924 to give this right to everybody, as well as bilingual education, Lau versus Nickel. Why we have bilingual education in America is because the Chinese in San Francisco sue. So when you think about all these contribution, immigrant rights, civil rights, it's the Chinese we brought this about. So after Trump signed that affirmative action, I'm getting about 10 calls a day from the media asking about this Chinese case, Wong Kim Art versus the US. We don't talk about this. So, Haipei, I'm really glad to team up with you. At least tonight, we have about 250 more people that's aware of this.
Back to that narrow technical question. The last day of the Chinese New Year, you said there's maybe on a smaller scale, another parade in Chinatown in the evening.
Well, this was when I was growing up in Taiwan, all the kids in the neighborhood, Yuan Xiaojie, came out with their lanterns.
Right.
And it was very special for me because we had all these air raid shelter. Hong Kong Dong. And we would never go there because it was so creepy. But since there would be dozens of us with lanterns, we would walk in there and shout and scream. So for me, it was a real special holiday that I remember. But in traditional China, in the villages, kids would come out with lanterns and form processions. And that's the concept of our Chinese New Year's parade in San Francisco.
I saw that one picture with the hot air lantern or the Kongming. Yes. Do you actually have that going out?
No, that is more in China, Taiwan, Thailand. They have these different times of the year, but many do it for the Lunar New Year also. Some float them on the river. Oftentimes, this is to get rid of all the bad things that happen to you during the year, to send them away.
Last question. Ever since 1850 something, from San Francisco down to today, was there any discussion or sentiment by Chinese Americans, not Chinese, especially the second generation or third generation? Have they ever thought about reforming part of the old tradition, or add something or cut something off so that it may fit more with American tradition and the values?
Yes, I think so. Nothing jumps to mind, but there's been a lot of changes. When China went through the Cultural Revolution, it impacted the Chinese American community. And I would say the more radical portion of the community wanted America to be like the Cultural Revolution, to get rid of all the old. But almost every change in dynasty in China, we have a Cultural Revolution. Qin Shi Huang also had his getting rid of the scholars, and almost every generation, every dynasty tried to change it. In America, we never really sat down to talk about it. I've thought about it, and I think other people have. I think we just need to convene and to do this more formally and think it through more formally for our children and for our descendants, their own identity. What is mythological? What are stories? What are really values? What are true values? Like getting an education. This is very worthwhile. Why should a 18-year-old graduate from high school make the decision, go to college or not? The Chinese would say, absolutely, you go to college. It's not your choice, it's your obligation. Nothing wrong with all Americans adopting this. So we have to rethink our values. What makes us Chinese? And what are some of the stories told in the old days that really do not apply today? Like some of the 24 filial pieties, when one of the person, he exposed himself so the mosquito will bite him instead of his parents. Young kids today says, just use off, use some kind of insect repellent. This is stupid. But the gist of it, the concept is good. So we might have to make up new stories.
Great.
Okay. Stephanie has been raising a hand for a while. Stephanie, your turn.
Great. And thank you so much, David, for the fantastic workshop, which is so educational and interesting. And I myself am so proud and so honored to have the opportunity to meet you 1 month ago in person in DC. And as a national board member of UCA, I believe I can speak for our whole team how grateful we are to you that you are teamed up with UCA for this series of the workshop. And thank you and Happy so much for making this happen. I have two questions, one easy one a little bit deeper. One of the attendees asked a question about Sichuan. I am from Sichuan, so I'm curious, when you mentioned Sichuan has way more lion dance or dragon dance than anyone else. Is there any specific reason for that?
I think it's just the people that ended up in Sichuan. It was more isolated for a while. So so there's more dragon dancing. There's human dragons, there's flower dragons, there's bench dragons. I can maybe list 10 different kinds of dragons that are not found elsewhere. But that's what I know. If I did more studies, I might be able to tell you. There could be a lot more Kejia in Sichuan.
Yes.
There should be, it's the Kejia who migrated from Zhongyuan and brought all these traditions to the different places. So for Guangdong, Meixian has the most because that's where the Kejias are. So I think it could be the Kejia influence in Sichuan.
Yeah, there's several Kejia village in Sichuan now become very popular tourist sites and many people visit there.
Yes.
Thank you. And my second question is, I'm so happy to see today we have more than 200 friends across US join today's workshop. I believe many of them are part of or even being organizing some kind of Lunar New Year celebration in their own area. So I'm curious, would you mind giving us some suggestions how we as Chinese American utilizing Lunar New Year as a momentum or platform, even as a tool to promote positive image of Chinese American and also cross-cultural, cross-community communication or allyship building, especially under the challenging situation now. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think we have to be more deliberate to think through why we're having this celebration and the messaging to the young children and to just everyone that attend. You normally can only have one main theme and maybe 3 minor themes. So you have whoever planned it have to say, this is the messaging and what activities are we going to do to make sure this theme go across, whether it's celebration or values that we have, whether it's to honor seniors, whether it's just a plain celebration, planning, defer gratification for New Year to plan for it, the symbolism of hopes and aspiration, because this is the time where we rethink the old years and plan for the new year. So it's planning to defer gratification, which the Chinese do. Definitely to go to college is deferring gratification. And this is very core of Chinese culture, as well as obligation to your parents, to your grandparents, and their obligation to us to pay for our education and other things. So these are the things that you might want to say, this year, we're going to concentrate on this and use the platform of the Lunar New Year to tell these stories. Lion dancers, if they're good, is pantomime. What they do is they don't talk. They do a pantomime of a story. That's why we say 彩青. There's about 500 documented stories that the lions can tell without speaking. You do a different chant or ching maze, a challenge for the lions to tell the different stories you have. So instead of the lion dancers just jump around, you do a special lion dance that tells a message. And I can give you many of these. I give a whole talk on just line dancing. I give another talk on just dragon dancing. I can do a talk on almost every topic I mentioned today. But the other thing is we have a lot of Chinese schools here. And I think Chinese schools need to start teaching the kids Chinese American history instead of just this is the way it's celebrated in China. Because the kids here are very different. And they ask a lot of difficult questions, which we want to encourage, right? We don't want them to just say, this is the way China does it, and this is the way we're going to do it, and end the story without telling why China does it or why we do it. So I think it's very hard to train teachers to just read a curriculum, because I can write the curriculum, and there are curriculums out there, but teachers just don't have time. And if kids ask the challenging questions like you're asking me, it's very hard for the teachers to answer. So I think the answer is if I and some of the volunteers I have that are very versed in Chinese American history to zoom in on these classes, I'm more than happy to do that, because I think that's the solution. Because if your group, your city is going to have a little celebration, you need a little explanation. I'll zoom in and talk a bit about it, or I'll answer the question, or you want to talk to me about specific celebration and activities you can do to promote certain concept. I'm more than happy to talk to you one-on-one before, because it's so diverse. So in this, with so many people, it's hard to discuss, but definitely just contact me, get hold of Haipei. So I don't mind being busy, but get hold of me and I can talk with you one-on-one to be very specific of what you can do to help get these concepts out, to get our children to feel more comfortable with their culture, that all these are not just hocus pocus, superstition. There's real meaning behind all these things, or the Chinese were too practical. We wouldn't be doing this all these years. So that's really the message, that there's really science, there's psychology behind a lot of these. So I'm more than happy to talk with everybody one-on-one.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you so much. Really appreciate it.
And next younger generation, Zhang Lian, I saw you are raising your hand. Could you please ask your question, please? Zhang Lian. Zhang Lian, huh? Zhang Lian. Haipei is asking who.
Hello.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance to ask a question. Actually, I'm a Chinese and Mandarin teacher in a high school, and I'm asking this question every year, and my student asks me, so how do you name this festival? So people call it Chinese New Year, and some people call it Lunar New Year, because when we say Chinese New Year, and Koreans and Vietnamese feel offended because they celebrate the same New Year too. So if you say Chinese New Year, it sounds like they're like excluded. And so we call it Lunar New Year sometimes, but I also teach my students, I told them that like in China, we do not use just Lunar New Year. So our calendar is very complicated. It's based on the sun, also the moon. Like our months, like strictly based on how the cycle of the moon, but it's also strictly like built by the sun, because that's the beginning of the spring. So that's why like every year our New Year start around January and February. If it's only lunar, and the New Year will fall all the way around. So to call it Lunar New Year, I don't think it's scientifically correctly. But to call it a Chinese New Year, it also doesn't sound right. So I don't know how to teach my student how to name this festival.
Ask your student what they would call it to include everybody. For our Chinese New Year parade, we changed it to Lunar New Year parade in the 1990s to include all the other cultures. So we had the Hmongs there, we had the Laotians, we have the South Asian, and the Vietnamese. We had many people, but they switched it back to Chinese New Year's because it was easier. And some years we didn't have the other groups join in. So it depends on if your local group are just Chinese Americans or Chinese, then you can call it Chinese New Year's. But if it's a mixed Asian group, you can use lunar. But if you don't feel comfortable with just lunar because it's really not lunar, you would say the yin calendar or the farmer's calendar, New Year. So, because we have different words for it, or better yet, have the kids come up with a term and maybe we all will adopt it.
Thank you.
Okay. Happy, how many? How long
We
we
have
wait to-
2 more questions.
2 more questions. Okay, we have two questions from the audience. One is Jacqueline Lee. Your turn.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mr. Lei, I am a founder of the youth organization, and we are sharing the family tradition to celebrate the Lunar New Year. And I just feel like the session today actually is a great discovery. So I just want to take this opportunity to better understand my family tradition. So I'm also MIT, and so this is what we did actually during the New Year Eve. Like as a child, we need to like kowtow to our parents and also the great parents to like get the red envelope. And we never came to realize usually any special meaning for that. And I just want to get your insight. Is there any special saying for the younger or the youngest to do that?
Thank you. I will need to research it. The concept supposedly is the more you spread the wealth around, the more you will get. That's one of the thinking to get people to give more to the kids. But yeah, this is so important, the hongbao. For kids growing up, that's what I remember the most, to get hongbao. And it's just a great tradition. How it started, I don't know. I don't think anyone would have a documentation of this. I've never run across anything of how this giving hongbao to youngster came about, but it's a good one. I'll start researching it, see if it comes up. But yeah, I don't have the answers for everything.
Not a problem. And also the way, how do we pay, the respect to the elders and
Yes.
whoever give us that aspiration.
Yeah, some really bow and go to the ground. And this is up to every family, actually, is more of a family tradition. And what these traditions, they do is they bring back memories, and they're powerful. Traditions, if you know the reason for them, are very powerful. But if you don't remember the reason for them, you might as well drop them. I used to work with at-risk kids, the gang kids in Chinatown, and I used to take them camping to the mountains. And it's normally the first time they're away from their family and they're with their friends 24/7 for that week or two we're away. And they drop their inhibitions and they see the high mountain at night. They see all the stars. They start thinking there's something out there bigger than themselves. Around the campfire, we sing campfire songs, and they feel very close to each other. Friendships, lifelong friendships are developed at these camps. When we come back to the city, sometimes they're hard to control. And I would call an assembly and we start singing these campfire songs. And they're very simple songs, grade school songs. For the people that went to camp, they think about camp and the friendship developed at camp. And that feeling comes back by just singing these simple campfire songs. They think about that. But for the people that didn't go to camp, they said, I'm in high school. Why are they singing these grade school songs and having a good time? I'm going to distance myself away from these juvenile people because they didn't go to camp. They didn't have that experience. And this is some of the problems with our traditions and our rituals. From the outside, they look at it as superstitious. But if you grew up with them, it reminds you of your parents, your grandparents, and your youth growing up in your family. It brings back all those feelings and is powerful. And this is the way we have to look at it. We have to present it to outsiders why it's important to us to do it, to include them. Maybe they can practice it. But unless you have those powerful feelings behind your traditions, why are you doing it? Unless you're trying to create a new tradition. So hopefully I answered that to some degree.
Absolutely. Yeah, super beautiful and profound. Thank you so much.
Okay. Happy, can we have last question? And Justin Huang, you have been raising your hand for a long time.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I just want to give a little background myself. I a fifth generation of Chinese born in Vietnam. So thank you, Mr. Lee, for doing this, because that remind me of, if my father never teach me the Chinese tradition, I would never learn. And I hosted a Lunar New Year event over the weekend with over 1,000 people attend. So the question that as I start hosting the event is getting bigger and bigger because the culture is so interesting. But the concern was it become more commercialized. How do we keeping the tradition that is interesting and to the fact that you presented, instead of it became more commercialized, that we're going to lose the true meaning of this holiday?
Well, it's almost inevitable that if you let more people know, sooner or later it's going to get more and more commercial, like our Chinese New Year's parade. Without the commercial side, we won't get the funding. So that's the other side. But it's you and your family. It has to get to a lower level, that it should have meaning for you and your kids, that you have your own family tradition. So later on, as the family, when you have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, it gets bigger. When you get together, there's something in common that you can share that triggers these deep emotions for people. And that's the level you want to get to. Now, you're from Vietnam, where the Chinese were picked on. And so we find in countries where the Chinese had difficulties, they kept their Chinese traditions. In places like Havana, in Mexico, and Hawaii. Hawaii was because there were a lot of Chinese. In Havana, in Peru, where the Chinese were accepted, so they intermarry. You go there today, there's so little Chinese traditions because they were accepted. In San Francisco, in America, because of the racism, the Chinese gathered and did not intermarry and kept the tradition. So there's reasons for it. Japan, they've lost a lot of it because they went Western. They decided to go Western with the Meiji Restoration. But the oldest traditions they've kept there, but they oftentimes don't know what they have. Same with the Koreans. The Koreans think a lot of traditions they have are Koreans because many of them don't realize they borrowed it from the Chinese. So oftentimes there's a lot of issues with them applying with the United Nations as their culture, whereas if you dig deeper, it came from China. So yeah, from Vietnam is very much the Chinese culture is still there. because of they kicked out the Chinese basically in 78, and so there's still that conflict.
Justin, which city are you in, if I may ask?
I'm from Boston.
Okay.
I'm the South. I host the event in the South Shore area of Massachusetts, so which was great that we had over 1,000 people for the events. And I was part of the Chinese that being kicked back from Vietnam to China.
Yes.
So that's where I learned my Chinese and
Yes.
learned it more tradition. But then again, I wanted to host the event because I want my kids to continue to learn about the traditions.
Right. Thank you, Justin. So we're going to end our discussion today. I just want to thank very quickly our executive team who worked a lot on this, Ray Liang, Xiao Xiao, and Qi Hong, and the work behind the scene to make sure this is a good success. We also are very grateful for Chinese school associations who are bringing their audience and interest into this program that I'm pretty sure will benefit the Chinese students in their schools. And I want you all to leave today to think hard about why do we do this? Why we want to hang on to these traditions? And in what way can we interpret that, or even renew that, or even reform that, or even repackaging that in a way that bring more meaning to our life and to our children's life in this country. So to that end, we're going to continue this series with Mr. Lei, and you will hear us make announcements soon about the next one and one after next. So we'll have quite a few one, probably every other month going forward. So we want you to come back and discuss that with us. And thanks again. And next time, you really should bring your kids who will also find this very informative and rewarding. Thanks, everybody, and happy New Year.